Aloha! You are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room, episode number 244. This podcast is brought to you by Deadhead Rum. Fine single blended rums made with sugarcane sourced from the jungles of Chiapas. Master blended by 43-year rum veteran Jorge Perez, the most decorated master blender in all of Mexico. For more information, check out their website at deadheadrum.com. This podcast is sponsored by Frogtown Brewery, an independent craft brewery and tap room located in Northeast Los Angeles along the LA River. Tell them the Desert Oasis Room sent you and get your first pint on us. Limitations apply. For more information, go to frogtownbrewery.com and follow them on social media at Frogtown Brewery. Today we chat with Steve and Grace Ewald, the founders and proprietors of spirits brand Kavahol. Kavahol is a zero-proof kava-based spirit that works equally well in any tropical cocktail as many of their spirited counterparts. Here's Steve and Grace's journey to creating Kavahol and how Kavahol fills a new market niche in the zero spirits cocktail scene. As always, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. If you'd like to follow our adventures, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/PolynesianPop, where we chronicle events, bars, travel spots, cocktail tutorials, and more. And if you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/PolynesianPop, where membership grants you early access to podcasts and videos, front-of-the-line privileges to new merch releases, as well as exclusive content, meetups, and screen credits. Alrighty, pour yourselves a zero-proof cocktail and join us for Dry January. And give it up for my friends, Steve and Grace Ewald.
Inside the Desert Oasis Room.
All right, we are rolling.
All right. Hi, Adrian.
I love it. Thanks for being on the show, guys.
Yeah.
We have our friends from Kavahol here, Stephen and Grace. Thanks for being on the show.
Yes, sir.
And they drove up from Carlsbad all the way up here to the Desert Oasis Room. Thanks for making the drive.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Isn't it the weather really great today?
It's beautiful.
It's like every time I think summer's over, it reminds us that we live in Southern California,
yeah.
Glorious.
right?
Yeah.
So I was so blessed to live out here. When I met you guys at the, what was it called? Freaky Tiki event?
Yeah, in Long Beach.
I was really intrigued by your story because we started talking about your product here, Kavahol, and I thought, I want to have you guys on the show because I'm always looking for interesting people. And not only is this an interesting product, there has to be an interesting story behind it.
There is.
So I
How
want
much time we got?
I know. I want to talk about that because, wow, I think you came from a corporate background, right?
A little bit. That was my last job. My first real job was a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about that because I came from corporate too.
Yeah.
And I was in corporate for a long time. I was there for, 16 years at this place. And then before that, I was doing it's kind of corporate. I was in architecture for 13 years and some part-time stints in between where I was working at another company or sitting in a cubicle just like everybody else. And now I'm self-employed, which you guys are now too, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We all escaped.
Yeah. People ask me if I miss my corporate job. And it's funny is when I was in it, I hated it.
Yeah.
But I do miss, there's a few things that I miss. Like one of them is I miss the steady paycheck. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
Every other Friday, right?
Yeah.
That's probably what I miss the most.
Yeah.
But I do miss feeling like I belong to something, being part of a team and making an impact. And, and believe it or not, there's some parts of company culture that I was kind of okay with.
Yeah.
You know. So tell me about your story. You came from, what were you doing?
Yeah, definitely. So my last job was at Thermo Fisher Scientific.
Okay.
Huge science company, like the Amazon of science, basically. And I came from a tech startup background. Everything else that I'd ever done was a startup or something kind of consulting, contracting, but never an actual, in the office real job. So I was in the data science program there, digital marketing. I learned a ton. It was during COVID, so I was really, involved with a lot of just supporting science and that whole thing. But I was just around a lot of really smart people with PhDs, people I could pick their brain on science or tech or whatever it was. And I said I was going to do that for 3 years. Did it for 4, escaped, quit drinking in the midst of that. Started drinking a lot more during COVID and lockdowns. I'm sure a lot of
I think a lot of us did.
Yeah, where it was, it was under control until lockdown, and then once we were locked down, it quickly kind of got out of control
that's
for
interesting.
me. Yeah, and I quit drinking 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And I'd always liked kava. If we can, I don't know if I'm getting too off track here, but I guess the main thing would be, what is kava? Introducing that to people.
Yeah.
So kava is a root from Fiji, the South Pacific. They drink it in Hawaii. It's called awa, A-W-A. Ours comes from Vanuatu, so the archipelago right next to Fiji.
Wow.
I think even Papua New Guinea, American Samoa, everybody has their different types of kava and cultures of kava within the South Pacific. And so I loved kava. I found the effects wonderful, relaxing, great social kind of alternative for me to alcohol. But, I would sometimes roll around. If you make kava traditionally, it's powder. You got to knead it in a big bowl of water. Yeah. Tastes very bitter, very earthy. So I turned back to it when I gave up alcohol for good this time, and came up with this, Kavahol. We were in Grace's jacuzzi one night, and I was like, man, I got to get out of this company. What should I do next?
Yeah.
Grace will say it's her idea. I think it might have been. We'll give her credit for it, my co-founder here.
Well, here I just saw him miserable in his job, the corporate job, and drinking too much and trying to stay sober. And it's like, so how do we invent something? How do we scratch that itch, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of just scratched our own itch, realized it was an itch worth scratching, essentially, for other people, and thought, well, why don't we pursue something that, is in alignment with making our lives better, but also could help kind of better the lives of other people, too, who are looking for an alternative. And my background's in mental health. I'm a psych nurse practitioner. I work a lot in, the recovery arena. Prior to that, I was in the military for psych nursing. And I think it just kind of fit together with what was going on in the world with the COVID, lockdowns, people drinking a lot, and then just being miserable at this 9 to 5 for you, Steve. You know, so
I get it. There's a lot to unpackage here with what you guys said, because, first of all, this whole thing about the corporate structure that we came from. We talk about escapism all the time with Tiki, right? And I would argue that the average person, more than the average person, does not like what they do for a living. It's what they have to do in order to survive, right? And so you use the words escaped, you escaped, and you're able to do this thing on your own, and you followed this particular path. Was it as clear to you to follow kava, or was it just the opportunity that was in front of you at the time?
Yeah, I knew that kava worked for me. I knew that I liked the effects. I knew that in terms of relieving my anxiety, being able to connect to people, have a drink of something, relax, have a communal social event where you're sharing it and you're sitting down and sharing stories, just a format just like this. It's perfectly suited for it. And the big question when we started it was, can we make kava taste good? Good to a unaccustomed person, that had never tried kava before. Can we actually make it taste good? Could we condense it into a form where it works kind of as a novel spirit alternative? So what we have is not traditional kava. We don't say that it's kava in its traditional form. It's in the spirit of kava. Okay. And the whole sober curious thing was coming around. This was about 3 years ago. There was some, alcohol derivative type spirits. There was people were interested in, what if I just didn't drink for a while? What if I tried making mocktails? We tried all that stuff, and the big question was, what if we had a mocktail that actually does something? What if you have something that tastes great? It's
like an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
A mocktail that actually does something, because for some people, they're drinking mocktails because they don't want it to do anything.
Yeah.
But then for some people, they have to drink mocktails for health reasons or whatever. And they don't want to give up that, what's the term?
And the experience of it, the ritual.
Experience is a very friendly way of calling it.
It's like a social
like,
lubricant.
you know,
Something
when I'm talking about the high, you know, like we still want to have that special feeling.
Does something.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So for our listeners that are not aware of traditional kava, let's describe that to them. So I get kava every once in a while when I go to Pacific Islander events. You don't see it at tiki events. Tiki events, it's all rum drinks, right?
Yeah.
But you go to Pacific Islander event and you go to a hula halal, and you'll see people making kava right there, or drinking kava out of a bowl, communally, right? And even with strangers. So I'm somebody who's walking around with my camera, vlogging this event, and they'll call me over.
Yeah.
You know, hey, brother, you want some kava? Okay, I'll try it. And the kava tastes like dirt, basically. It's just like dirt water. When you say very earthy, it's like, it just tastes like dirt.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
And it's like water with dirt in it. But you get that tingling on your lips and your tongue, and you do feel this sensation. I don't know if you call it like feeling high or whatever.
Kind of, yeah.
It's not like a
subtle
buzz.
Yeah.
It's not like an alcohol buzz.
It kind of just washes over you.
I say it feels like when you're high on mushrooms.
Sure,
it tunes you in, is what I say. You're tuned in.
Into the
Tuned in.
Like a microdose of mushrooms, maybe.
Like a microdose of mushrooms. Exactly. That's a better way to say it. It's like a microdose of mushrooms.
Where you could almost forget that it's there, and you think, well, I didn't really feel anything. I didn't feel inebriated. But then you look back and you say, well, what did we do? We sat around and we had the best conversations ever for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
We dropped in. We had this wonderful, communal event. And then you can look back and say, okay, yeah, I think it enhanced that kind of present moment.
So when I tried yours,
Yeah.
I got the same buzz on the lips, the numbness.
Tingle,
And then it hit me like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
Because I was talking with you guys. And then all of a sudden it just washed over me. And I was like, okay, here it is. Here it is.
We love
Take a
hearing
sip
that.
here.
Mission accomplished.
It was great. So like we're making...
Cheers, Adrian.
Cheers. Thanks for making these. So we're drinking
Fiji Bula.
Hawaiian mules. Is that what this is?
Yes.
Okay, so...
This is a Hawaiian mule that we came up with.
So we take a sip of that, and I can taste the kava, and I can kind of feel it, but it's very subtle.
Yeah.
But this drink is delicious. It tastes like
It's pretty good.
a cocktail,
Yeah.
like a regular cocktail,
Yeah.
right? And with this zero proof movement that's happening right now, it's kind of a great alternative because for me, I was hospitalized last year. I think I mentioned this to
That's
you. Like,
right,
I'm not
yeah.
supposed to be I'm supposed to dial back the alcohol. They didn't tell me to not drink it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to dial it back. But do I? I mean, sometimes.
Yeah.
And then there are other times, see, what doesn't help is my daughter's a bartender of this new tiki bar 2 miles from my house.
It's tough.
And I'm going down there because, like, when I miss my kids, I drop into my son's place. I call them drive-bys, right? I just do a drive-by at my son's place, ring the doorbell like 10 o'clock at night. I'm walking out of Tiki Tea, and I want to see my son before I go home.
Yeah.
He lives one traffic light away.
Nice.
So I'll go see him.
Aww.
And if I'm here and I miss my daughter, I'm just going to show up at her work.
Yeah.
And I'll go down there, and she'll make me cocktails. And
You have to support the family.
got to support the family,
Yeah.
And and I told you guys earlier before we started recording, I just love being a dad, and
Yeah.
I love my kids, and I miss them so much. So I'll do whatever I can to bug them.
I love it.
But this zero proof movement, I really should be paying more attention to that.
Yeah.
And this is one way, I guess, like, this is one way to do it.
Yeah. It worked for us, worked for me, scratched my own itch, so to speak. So we decided to bottle it, and I missed the tiki culture. I missed being in tiki. I missed going to Tiki Tea, and the complexity of tiki drinks. We didn't know if we'd be able to make it taste good. We wanted to at least taste acceptable, where you could make some kind of alternative. But once we found organic Peruvian ginger juice, which we use in every batch, kava extract that's really pure and third-party tested from Vanuatu, different flavors and spices that we blended together with the formulation lab, and then our friends at All the Bitter, who actually came up with this cocktail for us.
Very
They
nice.
produced alcohol-free bitters, which are super concentrated, no alcohol in them, and they're just incredible. And that's what you really need and miss from a craft cocktail. That was kind of the final step.
Right.
And then zero proof cane spirit from Liars. We have that in there, so you get a little bit of a rum taste. Okay, so lots of questions here for you. So I'm going to start by asking you. You kind of gave me some of the answer for how you come up with the cocktails, because this is a out of the box or like an unorthodox ingredient in cocktails. Novel, So novel. So number one, how do you come up with the cocktails for that? Like what kind of lab work, for lack of a better term, experimentation, or even like mixology knowledge does it take to come up with recipes using kava, your product, Kavahol, instead of another spirit like rum or bourbon or gin? So that's one question. But before we get into that question, how do you even take an idea and make it reality? How do you sit in a hot tub and say, we should make a then like now you've got it in a bottle sitting on my bar. How does that happen? By the grace of God alone. I mean, are you entrepreneurial, or do you have connections? Do you have people that were already dialed in on how to make a product? A little bit. I'd done some products before. I was in the cannabis industry when I was younger, so I had done some edibles before and things like that. Everything else had been a virtual product, a digital product. I had said that I would never create something that people put in their bodies, a beverage, a supplement. It was just too much. It was too hard, too much regulation. Grace had said she would never date an entrepreneur, which luckily when we met, I had a job. You had a job. Well, my parents are entrepreneurs. We grew up in the restaurant industry. That's a very hard industry to be in. My parents are the hardest workers I've ever met. I mean, kudos to them. They're doing so well. But I entered the military because I was like, the government's going to take care of me. Forget this entrepreneur stuff. And then I very quickly realized, I think I have the entrepreneur spirit in me too. Maybe it's some might call it a disease, and other people call it a superpower. That's the thing, is that it is, when you say entrepreneurial spirit, and I'm going to concentrate on the word spirit, it's really like, it's how you identify, right? Because you and I, Stephen, came from this corporate world. And I was in there for so long, and I never, ever, ever felt like I fit in. It just never, I realized after I got laid off and I started to kind of explore other things and pursue some of my my passions, that I realized I'm more of a creative, and I am kind of more entrepreneurial in spirit than a cog in the machine. And there's nothing wrong with being a cog in the machine, because some people, they just want to go to work and do their jobs, and when they get off work, turn it off, and after 30 years collect some kind of pension or whatever, and that's fine. I mean, if I ended up that way, I wouldn't be complaining. Because it's not easy to be entrepreneurial. It's not. And I think it's a personality type. I mean, I think it's something that we were raised with, that you can do it. It takes an unbelievable amount of, I think, just grit and sheer force of will to get something from 0 to 1, from nothing to actually, there's so much friction to creating something that doesn't exist out of nothing. And how many times you get knocked off the pedestal? I mean, like, you have to keep getting up, keep getting up. You got to be a little crazy. Oh my God. Yeah. A lot of people look at, what I do, they think I just drink for fun. And they don't understand that, I have to find revenue sources to keep doing what I'm doing, through sponsorships or through merch sales or through partnerships or collabs. And it's a constant wheel, that you're just, you got to keep the wheel spinning or else, you don't make it. But I want to get back to you guys. So how did this happen from concept to actual reality? So I think it was an idea for me. You're a creative person. Creative people just want to create. It's almost something that you're just compelled to do. It's a vocation. It's a calling. And it was an idea that it wouldn't get out of my head. And I kept thinking about it and thought about it for long enough where I'm like, okay, I have to do this. There's no way I'm not at least trying it. Nobody had done it yet. The name Kavahol was available, the domain. I'd figured out a rough recipe in my kitchen. I started giving it to friends. Friends loved it. Usually your friends like stuff you're doing and they'll support a little bit. But then friends of friends started asking about it, and I started taking it to parties, and I took a shot with my friend who's now 11 years sober, and I never thought I'd take a shot at anything with him again except maybe straight ginger juice. And so I was like, okay, I think now's my chance to go for it. I just took all my capital I had available, all my savings, ended up cashing out my 401k, and I was like, just dumped all in. I was all in, and I had to figure out how to make it work. And then I had a deadline where I was going to leave my job, and things just worked out. You know, it wasn't easy. Got set back a number of times. I knew nothing about the beverage or supplement industry, how to order from suppliers, anything like that. Yeah. But I found a wonderful formulation lab up in North Hollywood called Ocean Blue. And Ocean Blue and their owner Marty, really people started kind of helping and taking me under their wing and taking an interest. You know, as you meet somebody like some of the bigger homies that have been doing it for a while, they're 5-10 years out from where you are, where you want to be, and they see you and they help you. And I almost couldn't believe it at first. I was like, some of these brands, other kava brands, I was like, aren't you guys competitors? And they're like, no, we want to get kava out to the world.
So they have this attitude of a rising tide lifts all ships.
Absolutely.
And they're absolutely right about that, because I see that as well, right? Mm-hmm. Not only just in, you know, I see that in my industry as well, like in the podcasting industry, like a rising tide lifts all ships, right?
Yeah.
And I, you know, without giving out any secrets, you know, I mean, like, what did you do first? I mean, because do you just say, okay, let me call a food lab and see if they can come up with something for me. I'll give them my idea.
Yeah.
Does it start like that, or does it start with you making some kind of prototype product in the kitchen?
Yeah, it starts with the kitchen recipe. That's where everybody starts, and the kitchen recipe is tough. Getting it to market and actually having the shelf stable, you know, commercial formula, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But it started in the kitchen. It started in my little one studio apartment bedroom kitchen in Carlsbad by the beach. Started in Grace's nicer kitchen, and Grace, to her credit, tried the worst mocktails you've ever tried in your life.
Yeah. Being the lab rat to the mad scientist.
Just floating oils and extracts at the top and particulates.
Yeah.
And you kind of start to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then just,
trial
really
by fire.
Just brute force, as we'd say in the tech industry, just trying every possible combination, trying all these flavors individually, where she would come back and she'd look at me and she's like, what's wrong with you? I'd be like, I tried like 200 concentrated flavors today. My tongue is burning. And you realize, okay, the flavor orange doesn't work with kava. Ginger does. You know, this spice, the standard stuff. Like,
cherries generally not very good.
Cherries don't. So like a sunrise doesn't work. But started working with some of my knowledge that I'd picked up from, you know, people like Jeff Beach Bum Berry, who inspired me back in the day, who kind of cracked a code, so to speak, this hidden knowledge of how things can work together and just work in harmony. And started working with, you know, some of the B.G. Reynolds syrups and stuff that I still had. And eventually found kind of a rough prototype that isn't what we have today, but it was kind of close.
Okay.
And then, just hitting up formulators, hitting up co-packers, and they get so many people, Adrian, that hit them up and call them, and they kind of like, I have this great hot sauce, I have this great recipe, my grandma makes it, and they don't understand what it takes to commercialize it. Yeah. So they're pretty selective. I mean, I got turned down. I couldn't even get a call back from the majority of the 100 co-packers I hit up. But once we found that lab and they started working with it, and I got to be up there with their food scientists, and they got their whole little lab set up, and you're sitting with them and they're iterating and you're trying it. And then by then I had so much kava. My whole head was numb. And then driving back to San Diego, don't recommend it, but I did it.
Was it the same kava supplier, or were you trying different kava suppliers?
It was
to dial in what's the right kava source.
So kava extract is difficult to source at scale. So it's grown in Vanuatu next to Fiji. There's large co-ops of people kind of grow it. I mean, there's just acres of it out in nature. There's different types of natural kava, but the noble phenotype, it's called, that has the right blend of kind of kava chemicals in it that come from Vanuatu. They grow it on their little patches and farms. The kava truck comes around and picks it up. It gets exported out there into the States, and then they make an extraction of it. And so you you're going to get the exact same thing every time. It's tested, we test it, we have the labs test it, but it gives you that right blend of effects. Because there's heavy kava, which you've probably tried, which kind of will knock you out, stick you to the couch. And then there's headier kava, almost like different strains of cannabis, which can be more uplifting, give you a little bit of energy. So we like the Vanuatuan because it's strong, it's got the right stuff in it, it's as good as can be. But it also, ours is balanced. It's not too heavy, it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And so we found it through some friends in the kava industry. Lalo actually is a canned kava seltzer. And they turned me on to a little bit of how to do it and, kind of where to get the extract and how it all works.
They've been the nicest, most gracious people. Really,
they've helped us a ton. And so a lot of people that put us on, and you just kind of go for it and figure it out as you go. Then we found the extract, we found the right ginger supplier, and it's just sitting and making a ton of phone calls and acting like you kind of know what you're talking about, not enough to embarrass yourself. But they're like, what's the MOQ on it? And I was like, I don't know what MOQ means, minimum order quantity. And then just step by steps, it starts to take shape and form a little bit more, and then there's just setback after setback. But if you're driven to do it and you just pretty much just don't quit, I think that's the personality type for an entrepreneur. We're just a little bit crazy where we just can't quit. I think it's more that than people say entrepreneurs are less risk averse. They can tolerate risk better. Not necessarily. You'll still be so anxious some nights you can't sleep, but you get through those initial phases, that initial inertia from bringing something from 0 to 1. And eventually you have, a prototype. You have your first 100 bottles. And it's like a miracle.
Well, I think your label. I think you also have to have the humility to ask questions. And really, we did go from not knowing anything at all, other than your love of kava and knowing about the plant and plant medicine, to creating a product. And that required you asking questions and not being afraid to ask those questions. And you just figure it out,
I did have a question about if there was ever, and you already answered it, if there was ever a time where you thought, you know what, this was a dumb idea. This is not going to work.
Yeah.
Did you reach that at one point?
Yeah, I still reach that. You just got to fight it away. It's especially with bootstrapping it, self-funding it. We had some help wonderfully from Grace's family. They've been really supportive with us. But when you're bootstrapping, you never have enough money. And then you sell all the inventory you have and you want to make more. And then you think, I don't have enough money to make more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so it's exactly where I am.
Yeah. Scaling up can be a real challenge.
Yeah. I'm on I just started year 9 on this podcast. Thank you. And I'm only saying that because for the first year, it was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to be my thing. And I was so gung-ho, and I was picking up sponsors, and I was, momentum was like really good. And then, you start to wonder, like, am I doing the right thing? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm self-employed. Thankfully, my wife has insurance and all that through her work, so that's how I get my insurance. Which before, when I had my corporate job, she had insurance, I had insurance, like through our jobs, we're both paying for insurance. Now it kind of doesn't make sense then. Now like it kind of makes more sense because we're only paying for insurance once. But there's that, and then there's the whole thing where after 6 years, 7 years, I start thinking, like, especially like when pandemic hit and it really slowed everything down. And I couldn't get out there and do what I do.
And you couldn't have people here. Did you have this already?
I would do it by phone. So like I have cables for my cell phone and plug it into my soundboard, and it actually made me more flexible in the sense that now I can talk to people in Germany or Australia, or and I did talk to people in Germany. I did talk to people in Australia. I did talk to people in Spain or Barcelona, like all over the world. But also, when you're not out making connections, you only have so much that you can do. But at one point I thought, like, okay, I need to do something that's more financially stable. But I just can't stop. It's just this, like, this is what I do, right? I just can't stop. And I honestly don't want to stop. But I keep telling myself, like, dude, you got to figure something out. You got to, like, get back on that steady paycheck or that steady revenue source, because this is just so, like, unstable. But I just can't stop. I just, it's that spirit.
It's your vocation.
It's just that entrepreneurial spirit where this is who I am now, and it's like, damn it, I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and at this point, like starting my 9th year, if I end up doing something else, did I give up? I gave it 8 years, you know? So I don't know, but,
it's pretty cool what you've built here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we listened to some of the pods on our way up, and just the face-to-face thing, I don't think that's replaceable, but
100%.
The people that you connect with and the stories they have to share, I mean, it's such a broad format. It's so much more than just rum drinks. Like, it's such an incredible amount of diverse cultures to explore. And so I think it's a calling. I think it's really a calling for you.
Well, you guys, I've never had anybody on before that had anything remotely to do with kava. I mean, and I'm going to keep asking you questions because, like I said, I have a ton of questions. So another question that I have for you guys, kava is not considered a controlled substance, right?
No. There are, federally, no. We are technically a liquid dietary supplement.
Okay.
We're not a drink, and we have to be careful with how we market it. It's not considered, they call it GRAS, generally recognized as safe food product. There's a lot of pushback to get it recognized as a food product by the FDA. Right now, it's a supplement. It's banned in the military. Yeah, Grace can speak to that. She worked in substance use and rehab stuff in the military, and it would be wonderful. We know a lot of veterans that have used it to help stop drinking.
Way better than alcohol, I think, for most military members.
Yeah. But at local levels and jurisdictions, places like New York, they're shutting kava bars down. Las Vegas, you can't really do kava. So it's at a local level, which is cool if things are done locally.
I just don't think they understand it. I think I think it gets conflated with kratom a lot, which is a totally different substance.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think there's validity to putting, you know, without getting too political, maybe some restrictions on kratom, but it's very, very different than kava. And so I think it's a lack of understanding that's really fueling some of that.
So this is why I ask, because we have medical marijuana facilities, dispensaries, and where are all the kava bars? It's not a controlled substance. It never was a controlled substance.
Yeah.
So why is it not more prolific?
Yeah. So
that was a tough word for me there.
The kava will make your tongue numb. I told you before you started, I was like, these are strong, your tongue's going to get numb. If we slip over it, it's the kava.
Right.
Kava drinkers will know. So it's a great question. The kava bar concentration, there's probably a few hundred now, maybe 300 or even 400 in the country. At least half of those, or the majority of those, are in Florida. There's 200 kava bars in Florida. There's other pockets.
Oh, there's that many?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a great kava bar culture in Florida. There's others in Arizona and different places like Colorado. But in terms of California, don't have a lot of kava bars. There's not a lot of
I only know of one.
Yeah.
It's in San Diego.
Yeah. There's Kava Collective. There's one in Huntington Beach. But you would think
don't
that
know about that one.
would be Mystic
I would think that California would be all over it.
We thought so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was, in terms of just overall kind of presence of kava bars, there was a kava boom in the 90s where kava started getting really big in the States and in Europe. They started making kava concentrates, extracts, kava pills, things like that. Kava started getting really popular as the next natural holistic anxiety treatment. What happened was it wasn't regulated, and there was a real lack of quality control. The wrong parts of the kava plant were used because the leaves and the stems and so forth can have kava lactones, which can be toxic. There wasn't good control in terms of how things were being, imported and used and extracted. Now there's really tight regulations from Vanuatu where it has to be lab tested before it leaves Vanuatu. They want to certify it as noble first. But in terms of what was happening in the 90s, it was just kind of a free-for-all. People didn't understand kava. They were taking the wrong parts of the plant and concentrating it. And there was actually some acute liver issues in Germany and Europe, I think it was.
Oh, interesting.
Still overall, numbers-wise, safer than, let's say, even green tea statistically.
But this was in the 90s, right?
And they were using the wrong part of the plant.
So we're talking like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot happens in 3 decades.
Yeah, still spooked people, though.
Spooked people enough.
Enough to ban it in Germany. And I think with those people might have had liver issues already. They might have been combining with
we
the
don't know.
medication.
We don't know what the condition was of the people that were
sampled. It really chilled the whole thing until recently. Kava kava had really kind of faded from the States, and it was banned in Germany. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then now with the resurgence of kava and the Sober Curious movement, you look at it and there's a right way to do it.
Yeah.
So we try to adhere by those standards with lab testing, making sure that what you get is noble from Vanuatu, making sure you know what parts of the plant are being used and how it's extracted. So there is a lot of education in terms of introducing people here to what is kava. And differentiating that it's not something else like kratom, which is a whole different plant entirely, but also kind of how it can be used safely and the standards. So we third-party test every batch at a science lab. We publish our results because we want to make sure if we're putting out something that it's actually better for you and healthy and safe to consume.
Yeah. We definitely are almost over the top with our testing, which is good. That's how it has to be.
Yeah, as it should.
Well, because our goal is to ultimately help people, right? And that's what keeps us going even in the hard times. So why would we put anything out that would potentially harm? So.
And Grace has a real job, which is
I do
amazing.
Have a real job.
My wife, co-founder and co-funder here, but she's a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So it really helps to understand what's going on in the body, what's going on in the brain.
Yeah, and I mean I see, because I work in addictions, and ultimately we can't really advertise this as something that will help people stop drinking alcohol. We can't make that claim, and we've seen how it's radically changed our lives when we were both drinking too much. I came from the Navy drinking like a sailor, and you were drinking, and our lives are so much better. And so you're speaking to kind of what keeps you going in those hard times and things like that too. It's really the fact that just recently we've been getting feedback from people saying how much it's helped them and really freed them from the kind of chains of their addiction, right? And then I see that every day working with clients, and there's some debate within the sober community about whether or not being kava is sober.
Is being sober, right?
Yeah, but I think for some people it radically changes their lives, and in the pharmaceuticals that I then prescribe have a lot of side effects. I mean, or they have the potential for that. So I'm hoping over time too, people will start to be able to recognize that very freely, that there are some plant medicines, just not only limited to kava, but of course we are very passionate about kava, but that can be really, really life-changing. And so
people in the South Pacific who are normally accustomed to consuming their form of kava, have they had your product?
Yeah, they have.
What are their thoughts about that?
Usually if somebody's familiar with kava or they're from the South Pacific, they try it and they think, wow, that's incredible, it tastes great. And we want to be careful too to differentiate that ours isn't technically kava. Kava is in its traditional form, how it's traditionally prepared with the dried root and water, and the entire intention behind it and the way that it's done and served. But yeah, it's been really positive. And we wanted to be careful too that we weren't just, grabbing random South Pacific imagery and tiki imagery and slapping on the bottle.
Absolutely.
So we've gotten a little bit of pushback sometimes from that, but then it's opened up a conversation where we get people a bottle and they try it, and we've really had some great conversations from people at first that are just like, oh, what is that? That's not kava.
Well, can I ask some clarity? So when you say it's not kava, just for our audience, what do you mean by that? What's different from Kavahol than the traditional kava?
So kava in its traditional form I described. This is a kava extract, and with other flavor spices and ginger juice. And there's kava purists out there that would say this isn't kava at all. It has nothing to do with it. It's not how it should be consumed. But overall, I think that they're
not like the rum guys, are they?
They're not as bad as pussers, but they're probably just,
They're not like the rum people that are like, oh my God, they add sugar. Yeah. Oh my God, that,
there's purists and connoisseurs with anything. I think a lot of the people that we find that really object to it are people that are going to be maybe on Reddit a lot of the time.
Oh, everybody on Reddit's like that.
Reddit warriors,
not necessarily people that are really familiar and grew up and know kava truly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it excites me because it's different.
Yeah.
And I wanted to run this by you guys. This is just a thought that I had. I thought, how cool would it be to just have some people here, either within my social circle or listeners or Patreon members, figure that out.
Yeah.
And do kind of just this kava, like a kava party, a Kavahol party.
That'd be amazing.
Because just to have them taste it and see it and be like, wow, that's different, right? Because I feel like after bumping into you guys, like I discovered this kind of thing that like, oh, there's this new product that I can enjoy.
Yeah.
That's not gonna blow me a DUI in my breathalyzer.
Yeah.
You know.
Totally.
But also, I kind of feel like it's like I said before, like this zero proof movement. I kind of feel like it's kind of like the solution for all of that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it could be and can be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an alternative.
It's
you
an
know?
alternative.
Not a direct replacement, because a lot of the zero proof and sober curious kind of thing, when it started, it was a 1-to-1 derivative. We're going to make something that tastes like rum or tastes like whiskey, and it was just very imitating alcohol in terms of its taste. So ours, we kind of take a novel approach where it's not a replacement for alcohol. It can be, but it's just kind of an alternative.
It's an alternative. Alternative is the better word.
And I feel like that's what tiki culture is.
Yeah.
It's not this complete countercultural, you can't join underground kind of thing. It's just an alternative way of doing things.
Yeah.
For people that get excited and really obsessed with different, aspects of flavor and fashion and cultures and interesting, kind of unknown worlds in a lot of ways. And so we look at it as, we say it's an alcohol alternative, and then we call the drinks that we make with it alcohol-free cocktails. So we still say it's not really a mocktail because it does something. You can make a craft cocktail with it. So we still consider it a cocktail, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to have a tiki cocktail.
Yeah. And let's be honest, the non-alcoholic rum alternatives suck. They don't taste anything like rum to me.
Yeah. They're getting better, but yeah.
Are they? Okay. Well,
I
don't know. I gave up on them a couple years ago.
Pretty watery.
So I gave up on, my son was so excited. He's like, "Oh, Dad, I got you this rum alternative because you're trying to cut back because I just came out of the hospital." Mm-hmm. And we cracked that thing open and made cocktails. We both sipped and we're like, "Yeah, no, this is it." Yeah. So like, if you're not gonna really be able to mimic that flavor, do something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Try something different and make something that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's where this actually fits that niche very well.
Yeah. And we started out we wanted to make a dark tiki rum, and that's when Grace tried the worst mocktails of all time. And then it kind of just naturally evolved with using the kava extract, and just kind of as it naturally fit in and expressed itself, it turned into something different entirely.
Yeah.
Which I think is more in alignment with kava in itself anyway, right? I mean, limiting it to just an alcohol alternative or looking for the exact same effects. I mean, it's an experience on its own.
It's different.
And it's different. I mean, even the name Kavahol, right? We're using it because it's clever and it kind of points in the direction of how people can tangibly understand, what it does. But it's different. It's not ever going to be alcohol, right? But it's like you said, it tunes you in. It has this other kind of presence-enhancing experience that some people might prefer. Yeah, they might prefer it.
I think it's cool. I think it was like, I got really excited when I met you guys and I tried the product and I thought like, oh, this is cool. I mean, just for the sake of our audience knowing, how soon was it after I met you that I asked you to be on the podcast?
Was it that day?
I think it was 5 minutes
It's
in.
like 5 minutes, maybe not even 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is it excited me that much.
Wow.
Awesome.
So that as soon as I tried it, and then I thought, holy moly, what a cool product. And it tastes good. And then I started asking you guys about your backgrounds and stuff. How did you guys, what is this? And you started telling me your background. I was like, okay, I have to have these people on the podcast because this is cool. This is, I see something happening with this. And the truth is, I see imitators wanting to do, I'm not saying that there's any now, but I can see this being imitated.
Yeah. There's others, and there's another great kava spirit called Kava Haven, and they're kind of more of it's not as intense gingery, it doesn't have the tiki flavor as much, a little more like a lemon drop, but they're great. We're really we're friendly with them. And so with them, and it's pretty much just the two of us, we feel like it's a new category, a new class of
here's the thing, being friendly,
spirits.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to be friendly with them right now because, there isn't like 100 brands out there.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of room for business for both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
when you drink kava all day, it's kind of hard to. I forget who said it. The name escapes me, but one of the very early explorers or something, one of the sailors or ships or something, when they first tried kava, you can look in his captain's logs. I think it might even been on like Captain Cook's expeditions or something.
Cook would make sense because he went through the South Pacific.
Yeah, and so one of the very early, I think he was an ethnobotanist that was trying to study different plants from around. He said it's impossible to hate with kava in your heart. And I was like, that guy nailed it 200 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, when I have kava at these Pacific Islander festivals, we're all bratas afterwards.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what a fun product. I want to make some cocktails with you guys.
Yeah.
We'll put you on video, and we'll put that on. We'll see where those end up on YouTube or Patreon or whatever. But we're going to do some videos right now for all of our listeners that are out there that want to see these videos. Yeah. By the time you're hearing this, hopefully I'll have a video up. Yeah. And you could find the link in the description. If it's not there, check back, because I will put the link in the description once we have the video online.
Great. So, yeah, I think we'll do this Hawaiian Mule, and then maybe our version of it.
So I get another one?
I think
it's pretty good, right?
It's really good. So here's the thing. I feel the tingle or the numbness, but it's subtle. Mm-hmm. And I can taste the kava, but it's subtle. Yeah. It actually complements the flavor of the drink.
That's awesome. Exactly what we're going for.
Yeah. So it's actually like, I judge cocktail competitions every once in a while, and one of the things that I judge on is balance. And this is actually balanced, refreshing. This is a great summer drink.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
And we'll do our pain chiller too. We don't want to piss off Pusser's Rum, so it's not a painkiller.
Not a painkiller.
It's a pain chiller.
Yeah.
That's really that's kind of our masterpiece that we've come up with.
I love it.
And maybe something, if you could help us come up with something too, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, let's figure that out. In the meantime, let's tell everybody how they can find you guys online. Yeah. And if they want to purchase some Kavahol, where do they go?
Absolutely. So kavahol.com. It's KAVAHOL.com. Instagram is Kavahol. And if you want to send us a DM, we'll send you a discount link for being on the show for the fans.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And check out the Patreon. I think we'll probably put at least one of them on there, patreon.com/PolynesianPop. The Patreon helps keep the show on the air, so we appreciate everybody's support there. If you want to check out our archive, that's on our website, desertoasisroom.com. And I think that's it for now. Oh, the YouTube, if you want to follow our adventures, maybe we'll put one of these videos on YouTube too.
Yeah.
YouTube.com/PolynesianPop. All right, so appreciate you guys being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Let's make some cocktails.
Let's do it. Thanks, Adrian.
All right.
Thank you.